Well, first things first is we're going to spend that karma. Juicy, juicy karma. Let's level up some body like I said we would. Boom. Confirm. Let's go see if our pals want to talk. Specifically, Gaichu. Hello, my friend. The cabin is in far better state than it was previously. The heat has been adjusted down and the ventilation restored. The boxes of junk and parts have been stacked and neatly arranged. And Gaichu's small amount of personal gear is tucked away in a corner. There's a small mat in the center of the cabin that looks like it doubles as both a rug and a sleeping pad. Gaichu is seated in the lotus position, eyes closed. His fingertips rest on a braille reader that is plugged into his PDA. The device fills the room with a soft clicking from pin combinations. As you approach, he lifts his hands from the reader's surface. Hello again, Stubtoe Williams. Is there something I can assist you with? Looks like you've carved out a nice little spot here. If you say so, I doubt it would be suitable for others, but I do not require much by the way of space and a few possessions. So long as I have a quiet area in which I can sit and relax, I'm happy. Now, what is it that you wish to discuss? How do you feel about that last run? I confess the purpose of our little adventure in Wixing Sky Tower eludes me. While in Japan, we had a notion, onmyoto, a method of controlling ki. It relies on ritual and incantation to banish unruly spirits. Feng Shui, on the other hand, seems more akin to extremely fussy interior decorating. The very idea that tipping over a potted plant or moving the orientation of a desk could have effects on a corporation's stock price is insane. Yet as we were working, I could see the flow of magic change. Perhaps this manner of luck manipulation is unique to China. It certainly would not work in Osaka. What were you reading? Gaichu draws himself up, folding his palms in his lap. With one toe, he pushes the braille reader away. It's called Hagakure, Hidden Leaves, written by Yamamoto Tsunetomo, as a treatise on what it means to be a samurai and how one should best serve one's lord. Required reading for the Red Samurai, unsurprisingly. Reliving old memories? Not so much old memories as old lessons. Gaichu smiles sharply, running a claw across the line of his jaw. I have many scars to remember my mistakes by, and each one seems to evoke a passage from the book. The author has a central thesis. When there is a question of life or death, always choose death. Throw oneself into the fray with no resignations, and act on instinct alone. My current state of affairs speaks the truth of this more robustly than any lesson in a dojo. What's the rest of the book about? Gaichu ticks off the points by unfurling successive fingers. It's partly a manual for proper behavior towards one lord, partly a rumination on the mindset required to be victorious in combat, and partially a collection of stories. Tsunetomo believed that to truly embody the virtues of a samurai, adherents should be mindful of their path at all times, never stop training, always question how one's actions reflect on their lord. Above all, be prepared to do your duty instinctively at any time, no matter what the cost. Instinct seems better suited to a ghoul than a man, honestly. Spreading his palm, Gaichu bows his head in assent. Some might take offense at that assessment, but I am inclined to agree. I do not plan with the same efficacy as I once did, but I would not curse the tiger for relying on its instincts. Why should I not make use of mine? Aren't you worried that you'll lose more of yourself? I have considered it, but I do not think it likely. How can I lose a self that no longer exists? If I refuse to accept what I have become, I limit myself to remaining a damaged remnant of the man I was. But if I embrace my new nature, I can grow and become more than a mere man. What does he say about a masterless samurai? 7 times down, 8 times up. Gaichu smiles thinly, wrapping a claw on the hilt of his sword. More specifically, if a samurai has not been a ronin at least 7 times, then he has not truly lived as a samurai. Those were different times, however. It was common for samurai to fall out of favor with their lord and be turned loose to wander. For company men like myself, the choice is serve or die. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss? I'd like to know more about what it's like to be a ghoul. Gaichu cocks his head at you, his milky eyes narrowing mirthfully. Preparing for the eventuality of killing me and collecting the bounty? Make sure you leave my face intact. I would prefer to be well-preserved trophy. Maybe I can sell your body to an herb shop, one of the stodgy traditional ones. Gaichu burst out laughing, slapping his knee. I can see it now. 8,000 nuyen an ounce for powdered ghoul bones, guaranteed to cure rheumatism and arthritis, and to balance the flow of blood in your liver. Gaichu grows serious, leaning back. If you wish to know about what it is to be like me, ask away. I see no reason to conceal the details of my condition. So you eat people? Gaichu blinks a few times and cocks his head as if to stare at the ceiling. What is it like to eat anything else, or for a diabetic to take insulin? It is like that a fact of life. I have found that most people are revolted by the concept of eating the flesh of humans, rather than the act itself. Taken in isolation of social concerns, humans are no more or less edible than most animals. The flesh can be of poor, high quality depending on all the factors you would expect diet, lifestyle, etc. I prefer to prepare my meals as I would sashimi, light garnish and flavoring, but with an emphasis on the taste of the base meat. Do I enjoy it? No, not especially. Some Japanese are fond of pork and chicken sashimi, but I have never been one of them. Gaichu shrugs helplessly. But it is a fact I must accept, and if it is how things will be, I will make the best of it. Do you feel bad about having to eat people? No, but I was never a vegetarian, so why should I? Gaichu seems puzzled by the question as if he's missing nuances of meaning. It does not matter where the meat comes from. Someone who died in a car accident is as viable as someone I kill. I admit I have eaten people that I have killed, but that was of necessity. I was going to kill them anyway. Why let their bodies go to waste? How come you smell nice? Diet and cleanliness. Most ghouls eat rotting flesh and not bathe. I eat fresh meat and bathe regularly. Are you a Highlander? Considering this, Gaichu leans over onto one elbow. I have no idea. I do not believe there have been any organized studies of ghoul longevity. Most strains of the human metahuman vampiric virus impart a semblance of extended life, but I do not believe that the Krieger strain is one. Somehow I think it is more likely that I will die in combat than of old age, no matter how long I live. It might be interesting to ask a doctor. To what end? I live by the sword and I will die by it. I have no illusions about my chances of growing old. Gaichu shakes his head in dismissal. How would I live out my days? In a rural country village, eating people who happen to expire on nearby roads? That'll not be my fate. What's up with your teeth? What deal are you referring to? Do you file them down into those points? No, they're actually new teeth created by the infection. I suppose it is a natural advantage to have teeth better suited for carnivorous pursuits. Well, let's talk about something else. We were talking about your father. Ah, yes, I do recall you asking about that. Gaichu's reticence is palpable in the long silence that follows. He does not continue. You said if I came back, you'd answer me. He sighs heavily, nodding. I have given you my word, and I intend to keep it. Do not be concerned. I have simply not spoken of my family in a long time. Bad memories? No, quite good ones, actually. I haven't seen you, Yasujiro, in many years, but that is my fault. We may not have seen eye to eye when I was young, but we have come to an understanding. Eventually. Yasujiro gave me an ultimatum after my run-in with the Shiaway's security. He told me that he had cut a backroom deal with a rival in Shiaway's to keep me out of prison. The charges would be suspended if I finished high school and studied at Kyoto University with the intent of joining Renraku. If I did not, Shiawas would take me into custody and I would spend time in prison. What did that cost him? I have no idea. He refused to reveal what he had been forced to do in exchange, but I cannot imagine it was cheap. Insider information, perhaps? A deliberately botched contract? Yasujiro was a manager in the Water and Power Division, so the deal would have been lucrative, but not secret. I had always taken my family for granted. Raised in a Renraku family, going to Renraku schools, I always had a sense of place, of belonging where I was. The thought of all that vanishing, I simply could not imagine it. Suddenly the reality of my actions became clear. Gaichu runs his fingers over his bald scalp, smiling distantly. From then on, I tried to be the son he wanted, and he seemed glad of it. We grew much closer over the next few years. He took time off to visit me when I was living in Kyoto. Why would that be unusual? He was a very busy man in those days. A lot of responsibility and very little time for himself. I was impressed that he could carve off as much time as he did just to go camping with his son. Camping doesn't sound very Japanese. It is more popular than you'd think. There is less open physical space in Japan than in North American nations, but most of Japan is still undeveloped. The steep mountains and valleys make construction outside of the flatlands prohibitively expensive, and the area around Kyoto is protected from development. We made several trips to the area between Kyoto and Nara, around the village of Id. We camped in the mountains above it. We would hunt wild deer and boar there using my family's antique arquebus. That's a strange weapon of choice. It's a choice of expediency. It's nearly impossible for a private citizen to own a firearm in Japan, which is why you may so often read of Yakuza attacks involving swords and cleavers. As the Tanegashima that my family owns is from the 18th century, it is exempt from ordinary regulations. Gaichu chuckles softly to himself. Perhaps ironically, hunting with my father is how I learned to prepare raw meat. Strange to think that this inadvertently prepared me for my current state of affairs. So how do you prepare it? Soak the meat in brine water and simmer it at a low heat for several hours. Let it cool and repeat the process over several days. It cannot get too hot or I am unable to eat. This process brings out the collagen in the meat. When it is done, I spice it with ginger and shanso pepper. Again, not too much. Mundane food is anathema to me. Sighing happily, Gaichu stares off into the distance. When he looks back, he smiles broadly at you. Those were good days. I'm sorry I cannot go back to those times. When one joins the Red Samurai, one must give up all attachments of one's previous life. The company, the code, and the unit become the entirety of your world. Even your family ties have to be cut? Especially those. Anything that could distract you from a mission must be purged. Commitment to the unit and the company must be total. Applicants must be human, Japanese, and utterly devoted Renraku. Your unit becomes your family. Your commander is your father and mother. Your teammates your siblings. Red Samurai are not allowed to reveal our identities and position to anyone outside the Special Operations Group. Even if we wanted friends outside the unit, we could not have them. So how did you join? A fair question, given my youthful indiscretions. Gaichu leans back, his blind eyes turned towards the ceiling. Are you familiar with this wacky Japan word? Nope. They're the political arm of the Japanese military. Much like the commissars of the Soviet Union, they're responsible for enforcing political and social orthodoxy. This is not just within the army, mind you. They also enforce certain laws with regards to the general populace. When I was enrolled at Kyoto University, I studied global security and political science. It is the major generally used as a gateway to private security postings with both government and corporate militaries. I knew I wanted to fight. I was a young man and my blood was always up. One of the requirements was the students join the Youth Brigade. The Youth Brigade is a bit like the ROTC in North America, the Young Falcons in the Sioux Nation, or the District Officer Program in the Republic of Korea. Members learn to be soldiers without actually joining an army. They perform community service and promote civic pride. Performance and prestige used to dictate later job opportunities. A bit like a good internship. Seems like the kind of thing Renraku would look favorably upon. When I was in school, the mega corporations looked favorably on Youth Brigade service. At the time, the interests of the Emperor and the corporations were aligned, a grand drive to return Japanese industry to the forefront of the world economy. Good marks from your Youth Brigade commander were a sure sign that you would be offered a good position with corporate security, and I wanted to be the best. These days, the more mega corporations have begun to resist that kind of nationalism in favor of corporate pride. Youth Brigade service is becoming a black mark rather than a positive. Gaichu shifts, resting his elbows on his knees as he leans forward. I do not know if the alternative is any better, though. When I was nearing graduation, I was approached by a recruiter with Renraku Security. She told me I came from a good family and could have a promising career with the company. She offered to fast-track my application towards a potential Red Samurai position. 3 years with the Renraku military as a junior officer and guaranteed placement in a Red Samurai training billet of my choosing. The pay was good and the excitement of being an elite was an attractive position. I accepted, but I did not truly understand what I was signing up for. As I told you before, they force you to give up everything except the company and the unit. That was made clear to me, but I did not truly understand it. So what happened? Exactly what you would expect happened. I signed the contract and became a soldier in Renraku's army. I was physically fit, the top of my class, and it seemed inevitable I would see my desires fulfilled. Obviously, I succeeded. The training was extremely difficult, both mentally and physically. I knew that I would be isolated from my old life, but I did not anticipate the full extent of that isolation. All Red Samurai recruits report to a facility called the Forge in Chiba. You're assigned to a unit, you and your 4 other recruits, and for the next 2 years the Forge will be your home and prison. Shaking his head wistfully, Gaichu snorts. It seems ridiculous in retrospect. We were all so young. None of us had any idea what we were doing, except trying to become the best soldiers in the world. And yet those strangers became my new family in the absence of the old. What about your unit? That chapter of my life is over and done with, and they are no longer part of my world. Why would you care about any of that? If I understand how you were trained, I can make better use of your skills. I can see you will not be dissuaded. Very well, I suppose it is a small thing to tell you. Gaichu looks down at his hands, picking something out from beneath one claw. He continues to look at his hands while he speaks. When I was younger, I would have more readily cut off my fingers than tell you what you ask. You must understand that secrecy is absolute among the Red Samurai. Your identity becomes secret, erased from any database that might connect you to the Red Samurai. You use only your code name when in the field. And your given name is known only to your commanders in your unit. Even other Red Samurai units have no idea who you really are. Finally looking up from his hands, Gaichu leans back against the boxes. Contact with the outside world is cut off completely. Even once training is over, your communications are restricted. Maintaining relationships outside of those you work with is frowned upon. That's a lot of stress. What if a recruit can't take it? Very few recruits get to this point if they cannot handle it. We all underwent stringent psychological tests prior to this point. If a recruit cannot handle it, he and the rest of his unit are failed out of the program. The rationale is simple. If one member cannot take the training and his unit cannot carry him through, they have all failed. Ishida was our commander. He came from a rich family in Saitama, the kind of family where he was given every advantage possible with the expectation that he would keep the family name prestigious. He was older than the rest of us, as he'd already spent 6 years in the army, a very severe man, rarely given to humor. Takagawa was usually the second in command. As our designated marksman, he tended to have a better tactical view of how an operation should be run, simply because he needed to study the terrain more. He loved to get us laughing. Without him, I think we would have gone crazy in the first few months. Our mage's name was Sasaki. She had been in training as a Miko, an apprentice priestess, when her magic began to manifest. She was in the unit for the challenge and for the money. Her family had always been poor, and they had always told her she would never amount to anything. I think she joined the Red Samurai just to prove to them that she could do anything she wanted. Was she hard to work with? Gaichu smiles distantly. No, actually, quite the opposite. She was excellent in encouraging us to go above and beyond what we thought ourselves capable of. I think part of her secret was that she never actually questioned if she could accomplish any of her goals. She simply assumed that it was inevitable. Our heavy gunner's name was Aomori. He kept the team honest with itself. He never had a disparaging word for anyone, but would not hesitate to call someone out for their behavior. Sasaki loved that about him. Really, she loved all of him. The two were discreet, but discretion only goes so far in such a small team. Still, we respected their privacy where possible. Is that allowed? If the unit commander allows it, yes. We were given incredibly wide leeway in what to allow or forbid in our unit, the belief being that results were the only thing that mattered. If the unit failed, it would fail as a whole. Sasaki and Aomori were crazy about each other, and it would have done more harm to keep them apart. Lastly, there was me. I was the close quarters and breaching expert, the first man in the door when we had to clear a room. I was the perfectionist on the team. Aomori could get us to do anything, but I was the one who made certain we did it, well, with style. What do you mean? If a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing well. If that thing is also your duty, it's worth doing perfectly. Many times we would perform a drill or exercise well enough, but that was not good enough if I had to trust my life to it. That is why we became one of the best teams in the organization's history. It's a thing to be proud of. Of course it is. Do you think I don't know that? Gaichu sighs heavily. I apologize. It's just that these feelings are still raw sometimes. Even if I were to be cured, I could never go back. They've been disgraced, and I've done unforgivable things. I've been cast out for good. What do you mean? Gaichu closes his eyes, sighing through his nose. When they ambushed me in Fukuoka, it was fight or die. I killed 2 of them before I escaped. I will not be returning to the unit no matter what. He opens his eyes after a moment, shoulders slumping. It's not an easy memory to grapple with. Take your time. Thank you, Stubtoe Williams. I'm sorry I cannot talk about it now, but I need to process the emotions. They're still raw. I'm tired. Come back later and we can talk more. Sure. Guess we'll catch up with you. Welcome back, my friend. Can you tell me what kind of work you did? Or the personal question. We already fucking spoke about this. You're a Shadowrunner. People on the up and up don't build murder bots for fun. Such a reductive assessment. I assure you, you're selling my little counterpart quite short. He is combat capable, very much so, but it is far from his only purpose. Crochet scuttles forward, its glowing red eyes low to the ground. Light glints off the metal of its armored chassis. Ractor runs a hand over the drone's killing legs, caressing the sculpted metal with his fingertips. Want to work together? A compelling offer. I'm doing quite well on my own, but I must admit there are certain jobs for which I'm unsuited. Magic eludes me and I'm not a decker. My strength comes from material objects in the real world, solid things with mass and heft, things that I can build and operate. Sadly, a great many clients are only interested in teams that display mastery over the intangible. This group of yours, do you have people who can cover those bases? If so, then perhaps we can help each other out. Former security expert. I guess that's the best way to describe Duncan. In that case, I'll accept your officer on a provisional basis. We'll do a few runs together and see how we get on. If our association bears fruit, it will continue. If not, I'll bid you farewell and go back to working alone. Welcome aboard, Russian man. I'm afraid I must bid you good day. Yep, good day. Goodbye. Take a cat nap before we talk to Duncan. You wake with a start. Once again, you're tangled in your sheets, drenched in sweat. Your throat feels like it's on fire. You can't remember what your dreams were about, not precisely, but you feel again that yearning sensation, the emptiness in your gut and in your chest. Your head throbbing, you heave yourself out of bed. Oh, that was a very brief dream.